Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm delighted, Quinny, that you're here. I'm delighted for the next hour you and I can talk all things Celtic. But obviously, I would be more delighted if we had a wee bounce in our step this glorious Monday afternoon. And the reason we don't is because of yet another defeat for Celtic at the weekend. I mean, we were just discussing this before coming on here. People might want us to evaluate the performance, talk about each individual player that didn't play so well, the decisions made by the manager, and we'll do all that. But I don't think you can have one without the other, and the other is recruitment. And yesterday, it was really stark for me, the difference between a team who has a system, a recruitment system, a strategy based on data, and a football club who has no system, no strategy, just buy your way out of trouble. And I think that needs to be part of the focus today. We'll start off with the performance, Quinny. We've seen this coming. There's no surprise, is there?
No, the writing was on the wall with this one, as the song goes, And yeah, it was really disappointing from that point of view. Like, I think coming into this game, like we kind of knew, I had my breakdown go out just before, earlier this morning. I think Hearts were really clever how they went about this game. I think Hearts went toe to toe with us, which was definitely one of the big questions coming into the game. How would they approach it? Would they go back to the Derek McInnes playbook, and be like anti-football, stuff the game out and try and break? But they came at us, and again, it'll be interesting to hear what your thoughts are. But I can't help shake, like, even on the build up to the match, everything I was talking about, and even living through it, and now here we are. It really has the same like feel to it as like a derby match from the early 2000s in a lot of sense, in terms of the ramifications to the league, and then like the kind of the fallout that comes from being so far behind the the leader in the table as it currently sits at the moment. And it was a game like that where McGregor gets any plaudits that go around, because we did get like half an hour of him really grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck in the first half and making a big difference. But these games, the decision, what splits these games every single time is mistakes, is set pieces, and sometimes like a penalty or something like that. The penalty doesn't really, change the game. Obviously, it kind of puts the nail in the coffin kind of thing. But that's always the way these games are decided. Even if it's high scoring, even if teams look good and the football's free flowing, the cutting edge on these things is always, mistakes essentially, or organization. And they just had our number in pretty much every one of those categories, I would say.
This is the thing. If you were to look at this, if you're a part of the data team, the analysis team who's coming in for the video analysis, so you can present that to the manager to show to the players, and that's what they do. It's a big part of the aftermatch, good, bad, or indifferent, Quinny. You are looking at the fact that actually human error was a massive part of the 3-1 defeat. However, in terms of quality and all the other things we've been talking about all season, these issues still are there. I saw you were at the game on Thursday night. Fantastic to see you enjoying the match. After the game, we spoke about is it a false dawn or a turning point? And these are the things that, throughout a season like this, you're looking for turning points. You're looking for that moment. And I was thinking, right, Engels has played really well. He's a player you and I have discussed on this show so many times. Some people think I'm blinkered to Engels, but I think what he's shown on Thursday is the sidey Engels that we have seen in the past. It's not like one of these guys who've never shown that. So it's like you're just kind of, it's false hope, and it's looking at a player like Yamada and just hoping that he does something. We've actually got a player in Engels where we know that he can put in performances like he did on Thursday, and you're hoping that that's a turning point. And we go into this game against Hearts, and it was a bit reverting back to type as far as Celtic went. I'm going to start off with the youngsters, Donovan and Murray. I'm going to start off with them because, again, we've been a massive advocate for youth, developing youth, bringing them in. The academy, what does the academy do? Chris McCart's been there since 2006, almost 20 years. Let's have a look at how we've developed that academy, not just the bricks and mortar at Barrowfield, but in terms of producing footballers. And then finally, we've got two guys starting the biggest game of the season, beyond Kyra Almaty, I would maybe say. The biggest game of the domestic season, surely. And we start with them. And I'm thinking, all right, it's maybe not the circumstances we would like to start bleeding players in. But you know what? Sometimes the blood and guts is what you need. Throw them in at Tynecastle. If they can come through that particular fixture, they can probably play anywhere. And I felt, you might know better than me, but I felt that Donovan deliberately was pushing the winger, the left winger, wide left. Zikaridis, this is the thing. These players come to mind once I had a good game against you. You were probably already aware of this signing. A free transfer from, is it Slovakia? Slovakian football. We've spent £10.5 million on two left wingers, and this free transfer was the star of the show for me. But it looked as though Donovan was deliberately pushing him out wide because he's maybe less dangerous on his left foot getting the ball in. The minute he comes inside and cuts inside, he scores that goal. And you're looking at Donovan saying, right, what did the kid do wrong? Probably gave him far too much space. But in his defence, I would hope that Nygren and Engels would be protecting you, right, as the midfield at that stage, Quinny. And also, you've got Dane Murray, you would hope, to put his body in the line of anything. And when you see that angle, and I shared it on my Twitter page last night, I think it was, you see the angle behind the player, and you're thinking, what's Engels doing? What's Nygren doing? What's Murray doing, pulling away from that? So, yeah, Donovan, it's your man, but he needed to be better supported for me, Quinny.
Yeah, I think so. I think Hearts, like I say, I would say they were really clever in how they went around it, because I watched them for a little while against, I think it was Kilmarnock, maybe the week before. And Braga and Kizaridis were like way more doubling up on the left. And I kind of maybe thought that was a bit of foreshadowing for something we might seen against us. But they actually, they did really well to try, anytime, if you remember in the first half especially, anytime Kizaridis got the ball, it was one-on-one with Donovan, and there was like half the pitch between the two of them, to go down that left-hand side. And all the way through the first half, one of the guys brought it up on the Sky Sports coverage, but the first half, Kizaridis took the line the whole time, went down the byline, and that goal was the first time that he cut inside, so quite clever from him as well to kind of like sell the dummy the whole game. Like, I'm just going line, I'm going line. And then the first time he kind of, he does something different, everyone else is kind of caught in two minds, and he's bought himself that yard of indecision. He's managed to get the shot away, and obviously fortune's kind of favoured him ultimately. But the thing I would say about the young players playing, we all want young players to play. I think we can all see that Brendan really does believe in the two of them. He spoke about them in glowing terms. Kobe Donovan's played Europa League matches already. Dane Murray played a lot through pre-season and has had moments when he's been rotated in as well, where he's looked the part. But I just can't, I said in the preview, like, I just couldn't believe he would go with both of them together. Whether you go with Trusty Donovan or Murray Ralston, it's kind of pick your poison. But when you talk about recruitment, Kizaridis and Braga are both 25. I did some maths before coming on today, right? The average age of the Hearts squad is 28.18, if you want to know that, with the goalkeeper. And without the goalkeeper, the Hearts' average age is 27.7. So it's basically 28 is the average age of the squad with and without the goalkeeper. The two boys that are the headline makers are 25, very much in like that kind of peak zone of their career. All the age is in defence. 30-year-old centre-backs, 33-year-old goalkeeper. The right-back's 24. And then the midfield and everyone, Shanklin's 30. But outside of that, the whole midfield is 27, 28, that average age. And even though Kizaridis and Braga come from like a low level of football, they've played a lot of football. They have, and again, part of the profiling that goes in with some of the players that Ange brought us, was a big part of this, and it's something I've spoke about when I've been on here, I'm sure as well. But like players that have done well in adversity, like see when you look at Kizaridis, I can't remember the name of the team or anything like that, right? Never heard of them in my life, but he scored 15 goals last year. And fair enough, it's a low level of football, but if you can be at a bottom 4 team in the league and score 15 goals, very similar to how we found Giakoumakis, top scorer in Holland, team get relegated, then you get a bit of personality, they've got a bit of mettle, a bit of fortitude around them. And for us to play Donovan, who you could probably count on one hand, his senior appearances, Murray the same, against two guys like that are not just in a good place and a good squad and all the rest of it, but, they're not quite veterans, but they know themselves, they know the game, and everyone will tell you experienced players just know the game a bit better because it's about how you buy your yard off your man and what stupid decisions the referee's given and when someone is watching you and when you can get away from somebody, all these little things you pick up from reps and matches. And, I said they're on it, they've got their tails up, they've got that on us. And then I just thought, and I wouldn't really go after one over the other. I know Murray's going to get all the headlines because of how the game actually transpired, but I think if you just had one of the other ones, Ralston or Trusty, in that side of the pitch, I think a lot of the problems go away. does the match maybe still go away from us? It's kind of hard to say at that point, but when it comes to like recruitment and then youth, in terms of all that context you've kind of given me, that's kind of how I come out of the game feeling. Because Murray and Donovan, like, imagine we won that game, they would have come out absolute heroes. Roger would have come out a genius, and fair enough, you can get it. But I seen Trusty on the bench for Strumpf Graz. Like, I was at the game, so you see him kind of coming on the pitch at half time, doing the warm-ups. Doesn't look like he's in bad shape. I know that injury he had is quite a sore one. And I don't know if it just kind of reeks of the whole club signing malarkey. Like, you know, I'm going to stick with Murray over, I don't know. The right foot, left foot thing maybe comes into it a little bit, and I'll stop talking so we're on a bit of a run here. But I was very surprised that Trusty really was not picked for it. And a lot of reasons.
I was as well. I was as well, right? And again, it isn't. We're not going for the young players, right? We're absolutely not. I think you make a good point that you've got a tag team there. You've got two guys, so yeah, sprinkle that with a bit of experience and help the other one through. I think, and again, not even with hindsight, but when we're talking about predicted 11s, I'm starting with Trusty all day long. I said that all week. I would start with Trusty. I don't know what has gone wrong with Trusty. Trusty's not started a game for Celtic this season. And I don't know why, because, you know, last season he was bedding into the team. Adamida was on a slightly different track because already he'd spent 6 months at Celtic on loan, and then he's gone back to Norwich, played a few games, come back to Celtic. But he knew what he was coming into. He knew the expectations, the demands of the club and us as supporters. And then you've got Engels and Trusty coming into that as well. But I think that with that campaign, the double winning campaign plus a Champions League campaign under your belt, that must stand for something. Quinny, you're talking there about, you know, taking someone from a league that isn't really in the top echelons of European football, but he's played a lot of football, so he's got the experience. And I just think that when a Celtic player comes in and he tastes the success and he's got the Champions League football under his belt, that counts for something for me, because that's experience and it's about, you know, problem solving in match. And Trusty's not been given an opportunity. We will be talking about recruitment, the Chris Sutton versus Neil Lennon debate, even if it is debate. We'll be looking ahead to January because, again, I've got to say it, you'll have the exact date written down. This man, to my right as you look at the screen, tipped Hearts to come second as far away as May, I think it was, right? And you were talking about this Tony Bloom revolution, if you like, within football. Moneyball, data, analysis. We've had Alan Morrison appearing on A Celtic State of Mind for a number of years. Alan originally was a blogger for his own blog, Celtic by Numbers. Fantastic. Go and check it out. And he started talking to us on a show that we used to call A Celtic Stat of Mind. And Kevin Graham and I would come into it with all these ideas about who should be playing and this and that. And Alan would then hit us with some data and we'd be like, that's interesting. It's really interesting because you've got the eye test versus the data and all the rest of it. And I still see it as an incredible tool. But a few years ago, I was party to a presentation around how data is used in recruitment. And I've got to say that really opened my eyes to that side of it. I'm probably talking 2 or 3 years ago now. And it really opened my eyes to the recruitment side of it, because it's all about having players that fit a system. So you could go out and buy quality, even quality, and I don't think we've got enough of that, but you could buy quality players, but if they don't fit your system, then it's just not going to work. And I think that what you need to do is tap into as many margins as you possibly can. Now, with regards to Tony Bloom, what have we got? What have we got? Because everybody I speak to, I said this morning, chatting to JP on the phone, JP Mason, every time we speak to Celts, ex-Celts and all the rest of it, agents, parents of players who are at or have been at Celtic, we're like sponges, Quinny. You try to get as much information as you possibly can, right? And we know that Celtic do use data. Of course we do, right? But to what degree when it comes to recruitment? That would be my big question. And the Paul Tisdale thing, the doctor, you know, the football doctor, right? Okay, so what part is he playing? We asked the question and we were told directly from the club, Quinny, he is the guy who identifies talent. He's the talent spotter, Quinny, right? So how's he identifying the talent? How big a part does the data analysis come into that, as well as the scouting team? We've got a scouting team, but I think data comes first, scouting comes second. The way I see it, please correct me if I'm wrong, right, is the management team of the football club says, right, we need a left back. So that's what we needed last season. We need a left back. We need a striker. We need a right winger. By the way, I think we also probably need a right-sided central defender now. But they have a list of players that they need, right, for the squad, Quinny. That then goes through a process of using the data system that you have. And the one, obviously, that has been getting a lot of the kind of coverage and everything else and exposure is Tony Bloom's Jamestown system, right? That's a system that you can buy. You can buy your membership of that system and you can use it as a system, right? So other football clubs can buy that system. It's like Photoshop, right? If you're a designer, you can buy your membership and you can start using it and tapping into the data. And just last week, Derek McInnes was talking to Simon Ferry, says we can look at any player in world football. We can look at anybody and we can look at their data. Fantastic. Now, it doesn't mean to say that's the only system available. There are other systems available. It's not as though he has been so forward thinking he's the only guy that has a data system, Quinny, that can tap into that level of information. There are data systems available. So even if you don't get Tony Bloom, what I would be asking as the football doctor, what I would be asking is, what is the best system available in the world, right? Because it's going to cost you less than Shin Yamada. Let's get it. Let's get the system, right? And let's implement the system. And then at that point, the gaffer and the management team have said, we need a left back. The system identifies within your parameters, be that wages, transfer fee, age profile, right? And other parameters. Here's your top 6 players. We then scout them. And the scouting reports come to the manager. And then everybody comes together and a decision is made from there. That is how simple I think it should be. So you're bringing in the input of people like the football doctor, you're bringing in the scouting input, you're bringing in the management team from the football department, and you're bringing in the data. And it's a collective decision. Do you think Celtic are doing that?
I would say no is the answer to the question. And I would say, like, I'm sure I heard maybe from the appointment initially, or maybe that presentation he done, but I'm pretty sure part of Tisdale's shtick is that he has an algorithm. Like he has his own version of the Jamestown analytics for grading players and for all that kind of thing. That's meant to be, I think, his USP, and he does get credit for signing Arnie Engels and Austin Trusty in that transfer window when he was like a consultant before he was actually brought on board. He was involved in that type of stuff. And since he's been here, you can look at the players we've signed, Tunekis and Balaquishas and the Grens and whoever else. So I think like there's definitely some attempt at it. It's hard to really... so I think this window, we were actually linked to some good players. I think we actually went after some pretty decent talents that we didn't actually capture. We didn't actually push the boat out for. And I don't think we really... because I think we were waiting for Champions League qualification. I don't think we really ever accessed the area of the market that we wanted to as a club, fans, everyone involved, because the Champions League money never came and we were waiting for that rather than acting irrespectively of it. So I do believe they do it to a certain extent, but I think they've just been... The only expression I can think of is sniffing their own farts for far too long on, the way things have been going and qualifying for the Europa League group stages 19 out of 20 years and everything else they want to do. If you put Tony Bloom into Celtic whenever he arrived at Hearts, where do you think we are today? It's not the Europa League. It's not 8 points behind Hearts. I guarantee you that, So, like, it's really just the wake-up call. It's the man in the mirror moment. You hope that these people have been burying their head in the sand with, and trying to hide. As I said in my breakdown video now earlier today, like, I think this game is a moment in time, a line in the sand. Like, from now on, Scottish football is totally different, because Hearts beating us, being 8 points clear at this point, and let's see how the rest of the season rolls out, is an absolute case study, a test case, proof of concept that you can take a Scottish club and, it's not even about qualifying for Europe, which Hearts will be aiming for in trophies or whatever, but see, even getting Braga and Kizaridis for the combined transfer fee of a packet of biscuits and selling them on for, let's even imagine they get 4 million for the two of them combined, which is highly lowballing the crap out of it as things stand at the moment. I think anyone would agree. That's great ROI, and if you can get into Scotland with a club that's quite cheap and you can buy players that are ridiculously cheap and you've got a good data system, you believe in yourself, then look, the team could come together, it could win games, you could get a good profile for them and you could sell them on. So it's kind of, we might be on the verge of getting the league we've always wanted, in the sense of like it is competitive. Other teams do, because that was the thing about Hearts. Hearts did not, they defended, but they were high up the pitch. You know, they've got a sweeper keeper that protects the back line for the offside trap, and it was a fight. It was a football match, and that was a big part of the reason why I think Rodgers is getting a lot of stick in the aftermath, because normally it's, well, they've got 11 men behind the ball. What do you expect us to do? You know, but they, 11 men were behind the ball at times and all the rest of it, but there was space to play, and that's what McGregor did. Well, as soon as McGregor got past the midfield, he was on their defence. There was holes, there was gaps that we could play in, round the sides and yada yada. We've all seen the game in the highlights. So they went toe to toe with us, and there's no excuses. Like he's trying to say, like Hearts fans will take set pieces and penalties at these. I couldn't believe his comments in the aftermath. It was just, that's delusional. To be frank about it, Hearts played well, and I seen somebody in the chat saying like, oh, they didn't like blow us out the water, but like everything that happened in that 90 minutes, they've been doing for a week in training. They've been doing for 3 months in training. They knew how they were going to attack. They knew who was defending. They knew how they were going to turn the ball over, and they didn't shirk that they were playing Celtic. For all intents and purposes, they were playing Hibs. They didn't act like they were playing Celtic. They just went for it.
The thing with me watching the game yesterday, Quinny, is that there was that, as you say, that game plan. And anytime I speak to footballers, coaches, managers, they say to me that you do have to try and keep it as simple as possible for each individual player. But they also need to know what their role is and what they're doing and why, right? I look at a lot of the areas of the Celtic team at the moment, and I'm not quite sure myself, never mind whether or not the player knows. We've got a situation at the moment where we are very, very dysfunctional, and it's all right coming out saying it's in the DNA for us to play, fast attacking, entertaining football. We've got to win first and foremost. I've heard a lot of people, and everybody's in various chat groups that are Celtic related and all that, Quinny. And I've heard people going on about, the Gordon Strachan era. Do you honestly look back on that and think we played scintillating football? Were you entertained? Were you entertained? So
you were.
Yeah.
You were. There was so many last minute goals and tight games back then, but we won them. We got through them.
We won them, and this is it. It's about winning, right? And see, everything else, you can put all the bells and whistles on that later. We're not even winning at the moment, so let's get the job done first, and then we can start looking at the utopia version of what you've just done. Absolutely, get the dishes done first. So when I'm looking at the situation at the moment, I do think it's the best time ever to talk about, like you say, that football moment in Scotland, whereby for a number of seasons we've been talking about all it would take is for somebody to get their act together. I spoke about, when I went to this presentation about football data in recruitment, I was blown away with it, and I spoke about that on Acsom. So you could see that episode maybe 2 or 3 years ago where I'm saying, I wonder where Celtic are in the great scheme of things. And of course, there was that famous, infamous, delete as appropriate conversation with Brendan about Gustav Lagerbielke. What data system, because it was fresh on the back of that. So that gives you an idea of when it was actually, because that was October 2 years ago. Okay, 2023. That's when that was, right? So it's in Brendan Rodgers' first season. What data systems do you use? Well, whatever data systems it is, it didn't tell me Lagerbielke couldn't run, right? So there was that moment, Quinny, of, oh, wait a minute, maybe we're not as good as I would expect us to be. It's like you just expect things from Celtic. You would expect us to have the best catering, data analysis, sports science. Totally. You just expect that, right? And then when you find out, actually, or you get a wee glimpse behind the curtain, and it's like, wow, he just shrugged his shoulders there when I asked him a question or something along those lines. Then you start to get a bit worried because you're taking for granted that your club's got this sorted. It's all right, guys, we've got this. And they actually don't, Quinny.
No, they don't. I was going to say, see, on that shrugging shoulders thing, Brendan signs off all the players, etc. Again, I've referenced it on this show a few times, but like I was at the press conference when Brendan came back and I got a really good question and answer out of him. And again, part of the thing that he said to me at that time was one of his biggest jobs, or one of the things he's learned from last time to this time, was saying no to players. Yeah, that was something that he had as a resolution coming into the club this time. And I only just kind of remembered that again over the last day or two, maybe listening to yourself or some other channels kind of reference the transfer policy and the disconnect that's there. So I'm kind of quickly reminded myself of that. And I think like if he is like trying to be resolute and going, nah, like these guys aren't save the money. Let's roll those 3 guys at 1 million quid and go and get Jacob Bream at 3 million quid, or whatever it would have been. Then I kind of get where some of that comes from. I just kind of wanted to add that in there because it was something that came to me in the back of my mind. Gustav Lagerbielke, for anyone who cares, at the weekend scored a goal and won a penalty for Braga, so he had a pretty big weekend himself. And also, just so I can score it off my notes from earlier, Celtic's average age at the weekend was 25.8, I beg your pardon. Without the goalkeeper, it was 24.6, so around 25. So the squad's nice and young in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of growth still in the team. That's greatly brought down by Murray and Donovan. Donovan being 19, Murray being 22. So I've got that written down, so I just thought I would share it in case anyone was wondering. You didn't tell us the other side of that.
There's some players that might be surprisingly young. Nygren's 24. Obviously, we know Engels is 22 because we constantly go on about, but he's only 20, he's only 21. Well, he's only 22 now, right? He's getting older like the rest of us. But you're talking there about Brendan Rodgers. So we are going to have to veer into this kind of territory, right? So there's a lot of people who just want to talk football. I was that guy reading fanzines back in the day, and I just wanted to read about Frank McAvenny and Paul McStay, and it was all about the board, and it was about the stadium and going public and all that. And it's pertinent to where we are because it's all about roots. I made the analogy that you notice a little damp kind of patch, a wee stain on your ceiling, you think, oh, there's a leak, right? So if you just continually get the paint out and just paint over that leak's going to get worse, and your ceiling's going to cave in, right? So actually, the reason I said that is that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. You get the plumber and they go up, they sort out whatever they're going on with the water tank, and that's it, problem solved. We need to get to the root of the problem, not just mask it by painting over the cracks, if you like. And I said that this morning, and because there is that big discussion point, and I've seen it on the socials, sack the manager. Sack the manager? Really? I think it's all window dressing at the moment. The root of the issue here is far, far deeper. You're talking there about saying no to players. Right. Well, I've got it in good authority now that Shin Yamada wasn't just presented to Brendan, he was presented to the whole club. And it's the usual person who's got far too much control at Celtic who was responsible for it. Now, I don't know. I've not been able to link up what the connection is to the person who's got more shares at Celtic and this particular player or their agency. But there will be a link somewhere down the line. So if you're presented with a player and it hasn't gone through that process, right, the due diligence, if you like, of Paul Tisdale has identified them, it's gone through whether or not that particular player is actually going to suit our system. If it's not going through that filter, Quinny, what you are left with is a clutch of players that the gaffer's looking at and going, there maybe are decent footballers, but they're not decent for my system. Therefore, I'm not going to register them. Yeah, I'm not going to register them for the Europa League squad, and I'm not going to play them unless I'm desperate for a striker, which we were in the kind of later stages of the game. That concerns me massively, right? Because if we're talking doctors, the football doctor, right? If you've been brought in and somebody else is identifying, I thought you were the talent spotter. Someone else is identifying and bringing players in behind your back. That's completely dysfunctional from a football perspective. And I'm not going to go through it again because I did it at the weekend and I did it on Friday. But we can trace that kind of behaviour right back to Gordon Strachan's time with the Paddy McCourt transfer, and the Roy Keane transfer, and other transfers that the manager had absolutely no part to play in, Quinny. He's been presented with players. That's just completely dysfunctional. And in the past, we either passed the parcel back and forward between the old Rangers, right, with the league, but nobody else got their house in order. Nobody else brought in a Tony Bloom, right? And it's like, but where's your Tony Bloom? Is it the football doctor? Is that our version of him? Because that's not working. That's dysfunctional as well. And I've said already this season, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, right? I've been likening this season to Brendan's first, in that you're watching the team, you're going, this isn't working. There's so many players that are flat, right? And there's other reasons about that we'll come to. Unhappy guys who'd emptied their lockers, guys that aren't playing, etc. There's an unhappiness. There's a lack of harmony if you've got 8 or 9 guys who just aren't playing or want to be there. And you're watching the team 2 seasons ago. It's very similar now. 2 seasons ago, we got beat from Kilmarnock, we get beat from Hearts. And I'm sitting looking at that game and I'm wondering how we get out of this, Quinny. And I think the way that we got out of it is Brendan Rodgers had a core group of players that he trusted, who basically got rid of a lot of the guys who were on the periphery who'd come in the summer and said, I'm not playing you guys now. right? And that's where Nawrocki drops out, and that's where Lagerbielke drops out, and Odin Holm, and all these guys that were getting game time. No, I can't trust you. Got my group, a core player. Some of that group was the likes of James Forrest, with loads of bags of experience, Quinny, right? And then the cherry on the top was bringing in a goal scorer in January, which we did. So it was a bit of experience within the squad and some new blood in January. Are you confident that we can do those two elements? Are you confident that that's the two elements we need to get out of this situation?
So to kind of talk on the manager part of it, I'm very much like just generally in the Rodgers camp in general terms, but like I do think what we've seen this season, the echoes of some of the failings we had last year is also becoming quite unavoidable. How we can go into that game against Hearts, and like some people in the chat, always give me a bit of love on I applied for a job in the summer kind of thing. There's a bit of a just chance your arm, bit of a gag sort of thing. But that job was first team opposition analysis, and if you're looking at the way the team has been playing against, like, even think about Rangers last year, they changed their shape to play Fenerbahce. It was quite clear they were going to do the same against us. We didn't adapt. They kind of caught us cold with it. Hearts, again, you wouldn't really think that there was much awareness that their two best players play predominantly down the left-hand side when we play Murray and Donovan coming into it. It's almost kind of absent. I've gave Brendan a lot of credit for changing the game from the bench and making adjustments at half-time. But really, like that's been... Like, we went 3 at the back not that long ago. He then spoke in the press conference like, oh yeah, we're going to need to try and figure out some different solutions, how to unlock the team. What happens at the weekend? Tanetke is the only guy with a bit of electricity. And rather than putting players around him, we just swap him for another guy and leave him out there by himself and go figure it out, do something, dance, just get on with it. So I do think like Brendan, whoever it is, the coaches, whatever, there is no plan. And see, when he says, like, I hear Celtic talking about plan A, plan B, Celtic style is whatever. When you look at our style, all of our players, they could not be further apart from each other. Like, that is their game, is get as far away from each other as possible and stretch the other team. And if you're just so stretched out like that, there's no passage of play where 2 or 3 guys are going to link up, take somebody out the game, put them on the back foot, slide someone into the channel, that attacking football that we're kind of craving, because everyone's just so far apart. By the time the ball gets to whoever you want it, Tanetke's got a guy facing him up and then a guy covering. So he's got 1.5, 2 guys to beat before he can play a ball in or try and find someone else. So I think there's borderline dereliction of duty with some of the coaching, the tactics, the match prep that is going on, because there's just clear, like, we should still not be playing with a right winger at this point. We should just be, like, I use the word cheating, but if you're going to play in the Gren right wing, you basically just tell him, just get all the way into the middle and just be like an attacker. And then you tell somebody else, like, listen, if somebody bombs on, like Engels, you need to peel out there. You need to cover that, and you just make a tweak, you make an adjustment rather than, right, Negren, you're just going to stay out there high and wide. We're going to feed you the ball. And when we do something, deal with it, figure it out. Because that's the way we play. And it's absent is probably the best way of summing up. So I do think gradually more, certainly over the last 3 weeks to a month, maybe from Kairat, it's really right in focus how one-dimensional we are tactically, And Hearts didn't do the 11 men in the box crap where it's you then hide behind the, oh, well, you're trying to play football and the other team isn't line. So I do stop you short on that one, but I do agree that, you can only play with what you've got. Could you play Balakwisha through the middle? Could you do something different with the team? Why did we not go 3 at the back against Hearts? Why did we not take off Murray after the third thing and just go, right, big man, like, fair play to you, but you're not going to save this now. You're not going to score 3 goals at the other end and make it right. Like, this is done. Let's take you off. Let's go 3 at the back or something. Keep Tanetke on, put somebody else up there, try something, make something happen. So to really answer the question, and I'll give it back to you, January for me is massive. I made a video about it a week or 2 ago. Feel free to go and check it out, anyone. But like, I was talking at that point, pre-Hearts, like, the board are under the impression that we are operating at elite modern club standards, and we've got a transfer policy, and it's more than just one window, and we've got targets, and we want do. No Champions League, not even going to get qualifiers next year the way things are sitting at the moment. I'm pretty sure it's only top of the table to get it. I might be wrong on that. Feel free to correct me. But how can they not Like seriously, like we are 15 million up on net transfer spend this season. Never mind the tab that we've got running. How do we not spend 20 to 30 million in January? Is the question I'm kind of like. How do we not? Like, there's no way we're going to loan in 2 guys and get a free transfer like they probably want to do. So
I'm going to tell you.
They have to go
I'm
big
going
in
to answer
January.
that.
They have to.
I'm going to answer your question. How do we not? And I'll tell you why, right? Because we've got a board that can't even be trusted to replace a banner at Celtic Park. That's the reason why, right? And they can't do transfers. And they'll sit there and they'll shrug their shoulders and they'll try and talk down to you, Quinny, because they know best. We know best. Everything they've got, they've inherited it. Everything that Celtic board has got, they've inherited it, right? So they inherited the stadium. They didn't have the vision to build that stadium, right? They inherited the 10,000 seat advantage we've got over anybody else in Scottish football. That was the vision of somebody else that came before. They inherited the fact that you can't get a Celtic season ticket. You have to go on a waiting list, right? They inherited that. They didn't build that up. They're just at the wheel. That's all they are. They inherited the fact, right, that we've got a global fan base, which allows them to go out and get brand and merchandise deals the way that we do. And by the way, they're not even that great at that. I've said this in the past. Go to Arbroath and try and get a kit deal. You'll earn your Spurs then. You're Celtic. You're going into you're getting a deal. You're getting a deal with one of the biggest kit manufacturers on the planet. Why? Because Celtic fans are everywhere and will buy them. And you've got a world-renowned green and white hoop jersey. That's down to the club. That's down to things you've inherited. Nothing to do with anybody in that boardroom. They didn't create that vision, mate. They've never shown the ambition to push the boat out, push the envelope. They're just sitting at the wheel right now. And a lot of people will say sleeping at the wheel. Some might say drunk at the wheel. They're about to crash off a cliff the way things are going. But they've inherited all that. It wasn't their great work. You know, I keep hearing about, but, you know, can you imagine what it'd be like with another board? Yeah. It could be better with another board. The board we've got at the moment, right, can't even replace a banner at Celtic Park, right? They can't even get their head round doing deals to the point where we come out the transfer window without a striker, another striker down, even though the manager said he does not leaving until we get a striker in. We sell him and we don't have a striker in. Yeah, the Rolodex comes into play again. We know it does, and Iheanacho enters the building. So that's the reason why January worries me so much, because we don't have the competence within the boardroom to do what you've just said we need to do. Because I agree, we need to do that. We absolutely need to do that. And every single player that comes in, we chased Balikwisha for 18 months, Quinny. 18 months. And at the moment, he looks like a bit part player. Brendan Rodgers was asked after the game about the substitution, Tuneki for Balikwisha. He just says, Tuneki's not a right winger, doesn't like playing there. I spoke about it. He's not playing there. Right? So it's like, he's so fixed. This is what I'm going to do. And no matter how often you question me, this is what I'm going to do. We've been chasing Balikwisha for 18 months. What data system told us that he would fit? Because at the moment, he's no fitting. People would argue that maybe Trusty doesn't fit, that's why he doesn't play. Maybe Engels doesn't fit. I'm a big fan of Engels. Maybe he doesn't fit the domestic game. Maybe that's why he's not playing great. So we're in trouble, Quinny. This is the thing. This isn't knee-jerk. We've been talking about this for months and months. We're in trouble right now. This form isn't temporary. It's not this season. I mean, the stats are all out there, 2025's not been good for Celtic when it comes to form. Our hit rate is poor, really, really poor. And people ask the question, when was the last time you won a big game? In many, many ways, I think the performances against Bayern Munich have maybe taken our eye off the ball a wee bit, because beyond that, the last time we won a big game was the League Cup final. We needed penalties for that. Yeah. We're no one in big games. You know, we're not out thinking Stephen Presley. We're not out thinking, you know, Tony Docherty. We're not out thinking who was the manager of him? It was Davy Gray. We're not out thinking him, or the Kairat Almaty manager. We're not able to go toe to toe with Derek McInnes and come out with a victory. That's hugely worrying. So when we go into the next game Wednesday night, you think to yourself, how do we play this? How do we play this so that it doesn't look like you're throwing the young guys under the bus? You know that when you went to the experience last time round, it worked to a degree. And we need to stay within touching distance of Hearts in the league. Bizarre that I'm having to say that, but that's the reality of it. And we need to beat Rangers at the weekend. So how do you do it? What changes do we make, Quinny? Because at this moment in time, we're going to have to deal with the players we've got, and we're going to have to, like, with a whimper, get over that line in January, and then we can start worrying about the incompetence in the recruitment window.
I think the biggest bottleneck we've had in the team in terms of ID and players that fit together, that fit a system, that we can, all the kind of coherent stuff that we're talking about just there. McGregor's been kind of like the bottleneck to some of that because he's not really the profile to build a midfield around in that sense, because he's not like the shield type player. But over the last, I'm going to say 3 or 4 weeks, the main bottleneck that's stopping the team, I think, progress at the moment is Hatate. Hatate has got a razor thin line of being madness or genius kind of thing, where if you look at him, if you think about your favorite Hatate game and you really went back and watched it, and you think about your most hated Hatate game and you went back and watched it, there's really nothing in it. They're so similar. There's not really much given it. But when you see him over the last couple of weeks, it's genuinely he's absent of mind sometimes on the pitch. At the weekend there, every ball he played was too hard, too soft. Nothing really went in the right direction. And, how he's still starting is a problem, because I think the best periods we've had over the last 3 or 4 weeks has been latter stages of matches. Balakwisha and Negren and Engels have all been on the pitch together. And, I think if you're going to keep Negren hanging out in the right wing, I don't know why you don't just drop Hatate for Balakwisha and just try something like that, where you stick him up next to Johnny Kenny or whoever else. I got a great suggestion. I'll have my Falkirk preview out tomorrow. So there is there's a few, depending on how you want to look at it. I think removing Hatate just gives you a lot more fresh ideas to try and change the attack up. But I do think the number one thing that has to change is just the approach. If we don't have right wingers, if we don't have the ability to be symmetrical and spread all the way across the pitch the way we want to, then you just need to wake up to it and just go, right, well, how do we get 6 of these guys in a team together? Derek McInnes has been playing a left back at right mid for the last couple of weeks and made it work very effectively. It became a feature of the team. Do you think that left back, when he went to him, oh, hey, mate, do you fancy playing right mid? Do you think, I know Balakwisha didn't look that great on the right. Who knows about Taneki? I interviewed Negren after Strup Graz, and he told me directly, I'm not really a right winger, mate.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I put that out after his miss at the weekend. And you just want him to put his toe through it. Just put it in the net, right? But he tries to be fancy. And I said he's never a right winger. We need to find his best role. And some of the feedback I'm getting on the socials is he is a right winger. That's where he's played his career. You asked him the question, Quinny. You asked him the question. What was the response?
Well, it was, he didn't want it. So the question I directly asked him was, "Oh, you scored the match winner tonight. Is right wing where we're going to see the best out of you?" And he really hesitated for about 10 seconds before saying, "I'll play anywhere. I'll give everything, but it's not. I'm playing out of position." Is the way he categorized it, So, but again, if you're going to keep him out there, because he can operate there, but he's not lightning. He's not got. You can see he's really been maxed out over the last couple of games. But you put Engels and Balakwisha over that side with him and get them to play football, I'm pretty sure it'll work out quite well. These guys all like to go at goal and cross the ball in. But when they've got people to play with, they look a lot better, rather than when they're all spread out away from each other and they're having to connect to each other and run all the time. They should be able to team up a bit better. So that's probably how I would, going into Wednesday. I don't think you can start Hatate. Maybe he just goes for McKibben, because he's kind of done that a few times. But I would like to see some invention at this point. It's been kind of teased and threatened, and then there's been no sign of it against Strup Graz. I thought that would have been a great chance to change it up and let's just try this and see what happens before Hearts, and then even Hearts off the bench second half. There's none of that, So coming into Falkirk before you've got to prepare to win the derby match against Falkirk, and I know the 3 points against Falkirk have become even more valuable, and you can't even take your eye off the ball in that regard. But you've got to do something to try and change things.
Yeah, it's all about energy, and it's all flat at the moment. By the way, we get the amount of goals and assists that we have actually lost, and I'm going to just quickly run through this before bringing the comments in, Quinny. So,
sure.
I'm going to go back to January. Kyogo leaves, and he takes with him 16 goals and assists. Did we replace him? No, we didn't. We brought in Jota. We didn't replace him, right? And then, Kuhn, the annoying thing about that, and it's a point that Chris Sutton raised at the time, and he went back to it after we were knocked out against Kyrat. Regardless of who you're playing in the qualifier, it doesn't matter who you're playing in the qualifier. Be as strong as you can because of what's on the line. What financially is on the line here? You've got to get through those 2 games by hook or by crook. And if it meant keeping Kuhn for those 2 games, right, the money's still there, Quinny. You're still going to get the transfer. You give him an opportunity to say his farewells. He gets the 2 games. Potentially we qualify, because he was worth 36 goals to us last season. Goals and assists, right? That's incredible. And we sell him. And you think to yourself, Kyogo was clearly going to leave Celtic after we qualified for the knockout stage last season. And that's why right after the young boys game, we sold him. It was announced that night. He's gone and Jota's in. And, he almost waved farewell with a first half hat-trick, but all 3 goals were chopped off. Bizarre. Ida, this is a strange one for me as well. So Brendan Rodgers speaks about he ain't leaving until I get another striker in. We then find out Ida didn't want to leave. It wasn't a player-generated move. Be interested to hear more about that, because I was a wee bit dubious about it initially, because the agent was coming out and there was talk of a move to Italy, and sometimes they do that to get the interest up, which they did, and he gets his move to Swansea. 21 goals and assists lost out of the team. So there's the first 3. The other 2 are injuries. So you've got Jota. He wasn't here for long before he gets his injury against Dundee United, but he did contribute 7 goals and assists in that short period of time. Has he been replaced? Well, we have brought in 2 left wingers, absolutely. Maeda, 45 goals and assists last season. So injured, obviously. But in total, those 5 players contributed 125 goals. And at the moment, we can't select any of them because 3 of them are away and 2 of them are injured. That's an issue, right? And obviously, you need to have squad depth for 125 goals to be replaced. And you're thinking, well, all right, that's offset by whatever Tunecki's done. That's offset by whatever Iheanacho's done and Nigren. I get it. But the differential's still about 100. And to be honest, where are you getting the 100 goals from? So going into January is absolutely huge for us. I want to focus on the Sutton versus Lennon debate, but before I do that, I'm going to bring in some of these comments. Robert Lower, great to hear from you, Robert. See you in Sky. You got it spot on. I'll tell you, you get stick for doing it, but I'll tell you my thinking behind doing the mainstream stuff. The real reason I do that, I think it comes home to roost, and it's highlighted in times like this where you've got to highlight what you're unhappy about with the football club, Quinny, right? Now, again, it's another criticism. Oh, you only do it when Celtic aren't doing so well. That's not true, actually. I've done it every single season in the last 6 seasons. So we've been winning most of that. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But when you're talking on this, Celtic could ignore it quite easily, and they do ignore fans quite a bit, Quinny. But when you're on that Sky Sports screen and that's getting played, and you know it is getting played in the reception of Celtic Park as soon as you walk in there, and throughout the stadium, it's about trying to amplify the message, really. So thanks very much, Robert. But it's not an ego thing. It's nothing like that. It's all about just trying to amplify the message, really. They bullied us all over the field, Sean Goodman says, in relation to Hearts. What did you make of the coming together of McGregor? McGregor was determined. He was just shoving folk out and shoving the ref out the road and all the rest of it. As a captain, or just, in general, I want a few players in my team, Quinny, who are hard like that, who don't give the ref a minute, they don't give all the other players a minute, and we're all over it. And I know a lot of people don't like it, right? It's the Keano thing, Roy Keane. There's your Roy Keane. Neil Lennon was like that for Celtic. It's a nastiness that I don't think we've got naturally. What do you make of it? Does it come naturally to Callum, do you think?
I think he's definitely got it in him, and I think the occasion really brought it out in him. We normally do see it in derbies. He's definitely got it in him. I don't think there's any getting away from it. And like I mentioned before, I think it was probably a huge kind of spark that got him, like when he's seen, oh, by the way, once I jump this line, I'm going to get through, or for his goal when he's on the edge of the box, he knows, like, I've got space. As soon as I get the ball, I know what I'm going to do with it. And yeah, again, you can maybe talk about, like, I thought Forrest was like half okay when he came on. Like, Forrest has kind of been around the track enough times where doesn't really ever let you down. Does he ever really add much is probably the thing that we're kind of maybe asking ourselves at this stage in his career. But yeah, you can maybe say we're missing a little bit of that from the game in general, because it was really, yeah, we got a good bit of it from Tierney. Tierney was not really taken to task, I don't think, too much. Scales as well. Yeah, like I think that you do need that in these types of games, and this is only the first time, by the way, and this is only the first season. And again, just to mention, Hearts Tony Bloom thing again, like his projection was win the league in 10 years. You know what I mean? He's not going anywhere anytime soon. You know what I mean? Like they've got transfer windows, they're going to be moving up, and that's a huge pressure point that we all hope, I suppose, the board get their acting gear with. The Rangers effect, I think some Celtic fans have longed for, like, if Rangers get good, then we'll need to get better, that kind of vibe. But it's maybe coming in a slightly more embarrassing way.
If anybody gets good, that's the thing, right? Let's make sure that there's people at Celtic Football Club today who don't know what to do about this. They don't know what to do, Quinny, and that's what worries me. Right, so there's banners missing. What do we do about that? I don't know. Let's have a meeting. But we had a meeting last week. I'll have another one. Then I'll stick it on my whiteboard. In fact, I might even highlight it on a post-it and stick that on my whiteboard, right? And then we'll figure this out somehow. And 10 months later, the banners are still missing. Now, you can actually use that as an example in many, many walks of Celtic life. What are we going to do to sort this out in recruitment in January? Do you have the confidence that those currently at the club are capable and competent enough to sort out in January? Let us know in the comments section. In the heat, nice avatar. Not to worry, guys. We've got 80 million in the bank. This is the thing. You could basically get your membership. You could develop your own data system and then sell your membership all over the globe. You should have been at the forefront of this. Yet we're at the coos end of it, Quinny. We're now trying to catch up on data analysis, something that championship clubs in Scotland are doing better. Joe Hamilton's songs, Hearts are bang average. I've seen this being thrown about a bit. Hearts will lose games this season. This is a thing. I mean, we're not talking prime Barcelona. They deserve. I think they deserve to win, and they deserve to be where they are. And I think that in Scottish football, I have said it for a number of years, get your backyard in order and you'll compete in Scotland. You will compete. And if that's what's going to, spark us out of this slumber that we seem to be in, then great. But we're still to win the league. We're going to have to find a way to win this league. David Doran, there will be no recruitment in January with a manager who is leaving. This is another element of it, David. You're absolutely right.
But they can't.
And the board won't.
They can't let it.
This is the thing, right? So you throw that into the mix. The uncertainty of the manager. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So what sort of approach do we bring in short-term guys like Ollie Burke in that? I mean, see, this is another element we need to talk about. So this morning when I was asked the questions on Sky, I twice tried to get it round to the AGM. I think that's more important than talking about Hearts for a Celtic fan, right? But they wanted to talk about Hearts. I get it. They're on the outside of the curve. They're not really thinking like that. Just they're thinking, wow, the romanticism of Hearts. And I'm thinking, well, they probably should have challenged us before now. Let's be honest, right? Since, in the last 40 years since Love Street, they probably should have mounted a challenge before now. Yeah, it's great that they are. Hopefully we react. But when you consider where this is going and how we actually deal with it, my biggest concern is the manager's future. My biggest concern is what happens at the AGM. That's a pivotal AGM. Now, I've used a thumbnail today and I've deliberately used the same image of Dermot Desmond twice in the last week because he's on the golf course. I want Dermot Desmond, right? So if Dermot Desmond is watching this, or if somebody at Celtic is watching this, because I've got it on good authority that somebody is at the moment watching this, probably looking for that cease and desist opportunity to send a letter and say, don't say that or we're going to sue you. Here's my opinion, Quinny, because surely I'm allowed that. Here's my opinion. Dermot Desmond loves the fact that he is, inverted commas, sorry, first time I've ever done this on Acsom, the owner of Celtic. He loves it. He loves being on the golf course and telling people that and, all his contacts for all the various business interests that he's got. And he's not the owner of Celtic. And this is the thing that, if you want to sell yourself as the owner of Celtic Football Club, Dermot, go to the AGM. Go to the AGM and face other shareholders. Face Celtic fans who are very unhappy with the way that things are going at the football club in various aspects of the club, from the stadium to the academy to recruitment to fan engagement, and face up to them and give us some answers, Quinny, because you can't have one without the other. He doesn't attend AGMs. He'll send his son Ross to represent him. He doesn't attend AGMs. We've got problems. We've got major problems, Dermot. If you're a leader, be a leader and come to the AGM and face the fans. Quinny, what's the chances of that happening?
Slim to none, I think, from what other people kind of hold this guy out as being absent and all the rest of it. I don't think he's going to show up to something like this, sadly. But it really should be crisis time. It should be like in the war room right now, because I was just thinking as you were talking there, like genuinely the only way this situation is any worse is if Rangers were ahead of us as well. You know, like that. It really couldn't be any worse. You know, in any manner of it. Fair enough, there's money in the bank, whatever, but not going that strong. No, we got the win against Sturm Graz, right? But not going particularly strong in the Europa. The league is, the league. All the stuff we've just spent the last time talking about, never mind in the last couple of months. There's how there can be any denial of the situation still would be impressive. Is probably the word I could think of,
Unfortunately, though, in an echo chamber, that's how it works, Quinny, isn't it? They will see even the mere suggestion, the word crisis, they will see that as us being entitled and spoilt brats and toxic. And Neil Lennon absolutely feeds into that when you look at
It's
his
a segue into it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It totally feeds into it. And I'm just going to say this, not because Chris Sutton is going to be our special guest on Friday night. 12 tickets available. Link underneath the video. Shameless plug. And I'll ask him about it behind the scenes. He might not want to talk about it on the stage, but he spoke my language at the weekend, Chris Sutton, right? Because he's not letting it go. He is talking about the roots of the problem rather than the leak, rather than the stain on the ceiling. He's talking about the fact that your water tank's about to come through the ceiling, right? And Neil Lennon doesn't want to hear it. Doesn't want to hear it. Why is that, do you think, Quinny? Is that because, he was appointed the manager of Celtic in the Hampden Shivers, right? Is that because, he is one of Dermot Desmond's cohorts, if you like? Is that because of that? Because I would suggest it is, to the point of embarrassing himself by just sticking your head in the sand, talking about not always being an upward trajectory. If that's your mantra, you should be nowhere near Celtic. You should be nowhere near this football club. We should always be looking to be on an upward trajectory. It's not acceptable to take your foot off the gas, let somebody catch up, like we did with Rangers. Like we did with Rangers, Quinny. Let them catch up. All right, we'll reset it. The fans are fine. They just want to go for 10. Well, we don't anymore. It's not about that anymore. It's about maximising the club from top to bottom, right? So when Neil Lennon starts that kind of chat and that rhetoric, it's so obvious where it's coming from, right? It's coming from the text or the WhatsApp or whatever of Dermot Desmond's hand. That's where that's coming from. And he'll sit there and argue vehemently with somebody who's actually, he doesn't have an agenda, Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton's actually doing his job. He's the only guy of the three. I'll leave McFadden out of this for now, right? He's the only guy of the three doing his job because he doesn't have an anti-Celtic agenda, Chris Boyd, and he doesn't have a pro-board agenda, Neil Lennon. So Sutton's doing his job there, by the way, Quinny, and he's talking my language. What did you make of it?
I couldn't believe when I heard him say you can't always be in an upward trajectory. Like that's, as I said to you before we come on, like it's a true statement. Not everything goes up forever. That's just like life, isn't it? You can apply that to almost anything. But if you think about it in the football context, it doesn't necessarily mean that you go backwards, except failing, except huge losses the way we have in terms of targets and financially and transfer market, Champions League, all that stuff. So I thought it was mental to hear him say that, especially being a football person. It's not like he's one of these board people. I've read the minutes of the meeting, and they're business people and they've convinced themselves that Celtic's their own startup that they invented, they started in 2000 and, whatever. Then fine, you just need to deal with them being of that way of mind. But to hear Lennon talk like that, I could not believe it, especially face to face with Sutton. And then even in the aftermath, we started Johnny Kenny in this game. We started Dane Murray and Kobe Donovan, who I back to the hilt, and I'm happy to have them in the squad and all the rest of it. One of them would have been fine at the weekend, but we start both of them, and he can look at that and then watch us get beaten that game. And he wants, because of the agenda kind of thing, he's laying it all at the manager. Like Brendan should have beat Kyrat. Brendan should have done better today. And I kind of mentioned it myself earlier in this one, but Brendan definitely has like a part in this soap opera, in this drama. There's no two ways about that. But to hold that as being the be all and end all of the situation, I think is just so wide of the mark. And it really just shows his colours. It shows he's a bought man, doesn't it? It just shows that he's not even leaning. He is like falling over onto one side of the fence, and there's no ambiguity around that.
Yeah, and I remember after the COVID season, Celtic fans being called toxic by Neil Lennon. That was his exact words. There's a toxicity amongst the Celtic fan groups. He said that there's a new breed, Quinny, a new breed. Seriously, you know, you're going to Celtic Park for over 5 different decades and you're called a new breed of Celtic fan. This is somebody who's been paid by Sky or TNT to give his opinion on Celtic, give his opinion on a fellow manager, right? And he does so by sticking the boot in. I actually looked at this in the early stages of the Sturm Graz game. This was a direct quote. He described Johnny Kenny, Sligo Rovers, as having a growing reputation when he was talking about in European football, because he backed that up by saying that he scored goals in the conference last season for Shamrock Rovers. A growing reputation. Neil Lennon, where did you get that information from? Who gave you that information that he's got a growing reputation? You watch any Celtic podcast, you ask any Celtic supporter if Johnny Kenny has got a growing reputation. Seriously, I mean, I wish the guy all the best. He should have scored a hat-trick against Sturm Graz. I wish him all the best, but he's not the answer. He was toothless against Hearts yesterday. He's absolutely no that. He's not got a growing reputation. He was on loan at Queen's Park, playing in the Championship and failing to get a game. And he had to go back to Ireland to get his confidence back up and score some goals. So you ask yourself, who's compromised here? It's not Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton's doing his job and doing it well. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Yes, we do have to talk about some of the boardroom issues. Ian Roy, always a pleasure to see you. Brendan and the boys can still turn this around. I hope you're right. The Hertz will have a wobble at some point. Yes, they will. And hopefully, right, there was that talk about we'll see where we are come May. We've seen a bit of that yesterday. I hope you've got your fire in your belly, Brendan, and we make demands in relation to January. And it's all hands on deck, Quinny. It's like, come on, you know, we really need to tap into every single margin here to make sure we're getting the right players, the right quality. It doesn't really matter how much it costs here, because you're not spending the money on the banner. So let's spend them on players. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. 3,000 strong. Sorry for cutting you off. Join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.